You're in the water loop.
Waterloop. Hey everyone, this is Travis with Waterloop. I know a lot of people want to use water-efficient fixtures, but they're afraid they won't work as well. Let me tell you about High Sierra Showerheads, which was named Best Showerhead by Popular Science. I just installed one at my house, and I was genuinely surprised at the power and coverage of the water. High Sierra Showerheads earn the EPA WaterSense label for water efficiency. They use at least 40% less water than the conventional low-flow showerheads. High Sierra showerheads are constructed out of metal, so there's no plastic involved, they're very durable, and they're naturally antibacterial. One of my favorite things, these showerheads are made in the USA by a small business located in the Sierra Nevada foothills. Get 20% off with promo code WATERLOOP at highsierrashowerheads.com. Waterloop. Welcome to Waterloop. This is Travis, joined for this episode by another Travis Thompson with Denver Water. How's it going?
Going great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Glad you could come on here. I'm excited to talk about lead lines and drinking water in Denver and kind of your approach to this issue, which continues to be an issue here in 2020 across the country, a real legacy issue for so many water systems. I wanted to come talk to you guys because you've kind of developed a new program to tackle lead that a lot of people are excited about, in that area, but also around the country. But before we kind of dive into that new program, what's the history of lead lines and drinking water in Denver, particularly over the past decade? I know that there's a lot of backstory that kind of led to this program.
Sure. So I'll just actually go ahead and back up a little further. So Denver Water, we are actually Colorado's oldest and largest water utility, established in 1918. But a lot of that system was actually adopted from previous water providers who originally kind of set up the lines in the city. So we have a pretty old system throughout the Denver area because of that. We're very fortunate, though. Our source water comes from the Rocky Mountains, right? It doesn't get better than that. So we're very fortunate. We have a great source water here in the Denver metro area. And we actually serve outside of the city of Denver. We actually about 1.5 million people, which is a quarter of the state's population. And we do that with less than 2% of the water used in the state. Of course, we're in the dry, arid West. So water efficiency and conservation is a big thing here. Half of our supply comes from the Colorado River, and a very stressed resource that's a valuable resource for many states out here in the West and even Mexico. So that's a little bit of history about Denver Water. And then, even though we have this pristine water source and there's no lead in the water that we're delivering to our customers or within Denver Water system even, there's still risk for some customers throughout our service area. And that's because lead really was a easy resource. It was cheap, it was pliable, especially when making smaller pipes that were used in a lot of cases for service lines. Now, each city kind of has a different arrangement with who owns what within the system. But here in Denver Water actually doesn't own any of the service line. So the water we deliver up to the point that line connects into our system is lead-free. But now there could be some risk once it enters that service line and goes into the plumbing inside of the home or even some of the fixtures of lead entering the water there. So big challenge for us over the last decade as we've learned more about potential risks and the fact that there could be these lines throughout our system is since we don't own them, we didn't install them, we didn't have really good record keeping of where they are, who was using them, what might have been replaced along the line. So, just like with everything else, we've been learning a ton, almost daily as, over the last decade, and then even more recently as we've embarked upon our lead reduction program.
Well, that issue with the records as to where lead lines are seems to be a big challenge for so many systems because they were kind of put in a long time ago, and those records weren't developed to really or maintained properly, and certainly not put on a digital platform like we're used to these days.
Right.
Cool. Well, so one of the things that jumped out at me was around orthophosphate, and this is something that I've always heard is pretty commonly used as a way to prevent corrosion of lead pipes, right? To keep that lead in the pipe, if you will, keep it out of the water. Why wasn't that used historically there in the Denver area?
Yeah, so just continuing with the history, I'll back up a little bit. So the lead and copper rule is something that Denver and most major cities across the nation have been following for the past 30 years. And as part of the rule, what we're actually doing is we are testing homes that we know have lead lines inside them. And we're testing to see what those lead levels are at. So as part of our routine testing in 2012, we had what was called an exceedance. And there's this 90th percentile formula. It kind of gets complex, but
It does.
more or less say you do 10 different tests, wherever that ninth line is, whatever that number is and above is your 90th percentile. And if your 90th percentile, if your testing is over 15 parts per billion, what it indicates is that as a utility, you need to look and see if you can better optimize your corrosion control. So in our 30-year history, in 2012, we had that blip over that 15 parts per billion. And what that did was it put a whole sequence of things into place. We started doing desktop studies. We started doing pipe loop studies. We actually went to homes throughout our service area that we knew had lead lines, harvested these lines, actually pulled them out of the ground, did not disrupt them, put them at a couple of our different treatment plants, and started running different treatment processes through it to see, different corrosion control processes through it to see what we can do to try to help optimize the corrosion control of our water system. Because once again, as a water utility, we're talking about how do we help a part of our infrastructure that we don't own or maintain or even know about. So this is really historically really the only impact you can have as a utility. And in fact, back in even 1994, we had increased our pH, which helps optimize the corrosion control. And so there's different techniques you can do. And so orthophosphate is one of those that's used throughout the country, and it's actually one that we put through our pipe loop study, along with increasing the pH and doing some other things. And the study actually came back and showed to us that orthophosphate does a great job at reducing or at corrosion control, and pH does as well. Orthophosphate actually did come back a little bit better than the pH on the numbers as far as what it did for the reduction. But, we don't want to make a water chemistry change without knowing the complete impacts, not only on our system, but others who could be connected to us. So we did additional studies as well and additional research and worked with other stakeholders. And while orthophosphate does well in some areas back east, the challenge here is it's a nutrient that you're adding to your water supply. Our wastewater partners, Metro Wastewater here in the Denver metro area, they're already spending a lot of money to remove those nutrients before they put it back into the environment. And of course, 50% of our water actually goes to outdoor irrigation. So that means through runoff, then this added nutrient's going to be making its way into the rivers and streams. And there's a lot of risk for algae bloom with it and all these. So we started factoring in all of these items as well. Because of that, we really wanted to push for pH. Okay. But the regulators are very clear on whatever the optimized corrosion control that you can put into the system through this is what, is ultimately going to be the order. And that's when we thought, let's get creative. Can we take this a step further? Can we do better? Ultimately, we're a public health entity. We provide the most vital resource there is for our community. We don't have to stop short just at our treatment plants. And even though we don't necessarily own these other lines, it's a community problem that's ultimately impacting our customers. So we got creative and we started working with partners and, gotten the support of all of those within the region, local officials, other regulators, those who could be impacted by orthophosphate. And we ended up developing what we call the lead reduction program, and even working close with EPA and our public health department here in Colorado to make sure that we can really find a more holistic solution
Hmm.
to this problem, even though we weren't in violation and we didn't need, we weren't being asked to go above and beyond. We thought, you know what? Why keep dealing with it with these little, almost a kind of a Band-Aid approach when we can just go in and take care of it?
Yeah. Before we dive into the plan itself, what pH level ended up being optimum for corrosion control? That's just a water geek question that I have.
Yeah, so I had mentioned we had raised it once before in the early 90s, so we were already at 7.8.
Okay.
Now, in March, as part of the program, we have bumped that up to 8.8.
Wow.
So our pH levels in that range right now.
Okay. And then when you did have kind of the exceedance with lead issues, how much public concern broke out around that, and as when that happened, and then maybe the years afterward, as you were still kind of figuring out how to deal with, how to optimize corrosion control and stuff like that. I mean, was there a lot of attention on this in the community among your customers?
Sure. So in 2012, when we had the exceedance, we launched our largest public health campaign ever. We actually, we have relationships with our customers because of billing. So we put things in the billing, but we went a step further and we actually purchased lists so that we can even get a step further. So if there was multiple families living in a home or multiple addresses at a multiplex, we were actually sending information directly to those people. And, really that kicked off what ended up being, a continual evolution of programming and addressing this issue even before the lead reduction program was put into place. So, at first there wasn't a whole lot of attention to it. As far as, I guess, the public response. But we continued to push, we continued to try to communicate, and most importantly, we continued to develop more programs to better educate and help our customers who are at risk. So you got to remember, at this point, we still didn't have the approval to actually go in and do much outside of our system. But what we did start doing in 2015 is doing free lead testing for our customers, where we would send them a sample box. They could follow the instructions, no cost to them, fill up 3 bottles. After, water's been sitting in the lines overnight, don't run it, fill up these 3 bottles. The first one you would collect would more or less indicate, does your faucet potentially have lead? Leave that water running. The next bottle, you put it underneath there, close it up. That would more or less represent the pipes within the home to see if you have any lead risks within the plumbing inside your home. And then the third one would be pulling most likely from that service line as that water's been sitting there. So then send it back. And so we can provide that education. And what it was also doing was helping us build our inventory and filling a database where we were learning, okay, so we're noticing all the homes before 1951, or a lot of these homes before 1951 are coming back with, lead in their service lines. We also had started doing lead line replacements when we came across it during construction. So routine maintenance, an emergency repair, a pipe replacement project, whatever that might be, if we came across a lead line, at that point we would start replacing the line. But we would get between that as well as just some policy things. Someone's doing a scrape off, or there's a new developer, making sure that they had to replace any older lines or lead lines as well. Through that, we were getting about 1,200 lead lines replaced a year.
Wow.
We estimate there's about 64 to 84,000 in our service area. So we were on pace for a 50 to 60 year removal if we were going to continue at that rate.
All right, so this kind of all ended up leading to the new program. I guess, tell me what this program looks like.
Yeah, so it's really exciting. There's multiple parts to it. The crux of it is to get rid of the biggest source of lead exposure to water, and that's the lead service lines. Of course, there's some other risks, but we said, in addition to doing the work to remove them as we come across them, we're going to develop an aggressive program where we will actually remove all of these lines that estimate 64 to 84,000 in the next 15 years.
Wow.
So that's the big part of the program. Now, of course, there's a lot of other elements to it. 15 years, while it sounds better than 60, if you're on that list, that's a long ways away. So, of course, we implemented the pH increase, which is obviously what the pH increase does. Not only does it reduce the corrosion, and I always use the example of, if you leave some gardening tools or a rake outside, it rains, that water is going to eventually corrode it, kind of create some rust on it. Same thing could happen inside the pipes, but it also strengthens this protective coating that builds up over time and helps kind of create that buffer between that lead pipe and the water running through it. So that's protecting our customers first and foremost. Then we also are in the middle of a huge distribution right now of more than 100,000 water pitchers with filters certified to remove lead. And it's going to every home that we either know has a lead service line, or if we think or suspect that it has a lead service line. And we will continue to provide replacement filters to these homes until we can get to that property, verify if it has a lead line, and if it does, remove it, and then we'll continue to provide that replacement filter until 6 months afterwards, just to confirm and verify that we did, in fact, remove the risk from that customer's property. And then, of course, we're continuing to build on our inventory, which is a big part of it. We've created some great public outreach opportunities, which is a huge component is the education and outreach side. So we have a map on our website, denverwater.org/lead, where customers can actually go plug in their address, and it'll indicate whether we think that they have a lead line. If they don't, if we know that they don't, or if they do, we're doing a ton of virtual meetings throughout our community and really just doing a full-on campaign to get the word out, make sure people are using the filters if they're part of the program until we can get there and get it replaced.
Yeah, that's amazing. 64,000 to 80,000 lines. You said you estimate you have, and
64 to 84,000.
Okay, 64 to 84,000, and looking at turning those all over within 15 years. I don't think I can get to my calculator fast enough, but that's a lot per year, right? 4,000 a year, 4,000, 5,000.
Yeah, 45. We're aiming for that 4,500 mark a year.
Wow. So, I mean, that's a huge investment, financial investment for you guys. Mm-hmm. We hear a lot about how utilities have tight budgets, right? You've got all this infrastructure you got to upgrade and maintain, and you don't want to raise rates too much. You got that squeeze on. How's the funding for that scale of a project working?
Sure. So just first of all, for some perspective, we have a very aggressive approach to our infrastructure here at Denver Water, and our capital programming is at $1.5 billion over the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. So just a little bit of perspective, the lead program, we're estimating $500 million over that 15-year program. So it's a significant number that will be factored in, just like the rest of our major projects, whether it's a water take replacement or a pipe replacement program or work on any of our dams. I want
to clarify, 500 million? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's still a pretty early estimate.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it, a lot of unknowns. This all unfolded really quickly and rapidly.
Uh-huh. That's incredible.
We just got the approval in December. Yeah. So the interesting thing, we talked about orthophosphate, and that was actually going to be what we were going to be mandated to do based off of the lead and copper rule and the order from EPA and CDPHE. We actually estimate that the regional cost, so Denver Water's cost would have been less, but the regional cost based off of wastewater bills and other things that would come into our customers, that our customers would have ended up paying more if we implemented orthophosphate because of all of the ripple effects associated with that. So this program, while it's expensive and it does a lot, ultimately ends up being cheaper than what the other solution could have been in this situation.
Yeah. And as you mentioned and stressed, you view yourselves as a public health agency, right? And lead is a real problem for people, especially those young kids, right? And so it's tough to put a cost on the value of getting lead out of people's drinking water. I mean, it's a great investment, right?
Exactly, and ultimately, cost wasn't the deciding factor. Finding the best approach for the community was what drove all of the decisions for us. Now, of course, we have to be mindful of ratepayer money. Mm-hmm. be that responsible steward, and we're continuing to do that, and that goes to a much larger discussion and way we handle our business, and making sure we're AAA rated, we've got good bonds, we're doing all the other things, we're selling hydropower and making money back, and being responsible across the board gives us more flexibility to, when we have a crisis like this or an issue like this, that we can actually address it head on and not have to worry as much on the money side.
Sure.
So there will be an impact to customer bills from it, but we expect it to be very minimal. And when you, like you said, when you take in the consideration of what it's for, it really becomes a no-brainer.
Yeah, no doubt. As I mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of people pointing to Denver Water for this program. Why is that? Why do you think it's viewed as unique and unprecedented? Is it really that just scale of investment and commitment to just going after that many pipes, or what? Why do you think all the attention's paid?
Yeah, I think there's a few things at hand. I mean, one, we weren't in violation. We had to optimize our corrosion control, but we weren't under any mandate or requirement to do anything more. So I think it was, our leadership taking that step back and saying, you know what, we don't have to go this far. The easy thing would have been implement the ortho, figure out how to handle it downstream, work with those partners. We knew it wasn't ideal, but we definitely could have made it happen. It would have worked. It would have helped reduce some of the lead levels throughout our community. But I think it's just, being able to say, you know what, let's kind of push the limits a little bit. Let's try something new. And, it was a great opportunity to really partner with regulators to find a solution that that they could support and get behind. And so it was a lot of work with them, learning from all the other water utilities. Others have replaced lead lines throughout their communities for various reasons. Others have had to make these adjustments. So it's just a really good collective program and partnership also, like you said, at an extremely large scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to follow up on kind of public education and public response. What's now the public education trajectory for the next 15 years? It sounds like this is just a huge focus for you guys in continuing to talk to people.
For sure. And equity work is very important. So, we're using a lot of data that we're pulling from our partners, local city governments, on, whether it's low income areas. We want to make sure that, we are equally spreading out this, getting to people in a priority that makes sense, finding the most vulnerable populations. And, that's tough to do. There's a lot of data out there that you got to start pulling into these databases. And so, we're looking at areas, if they have a lot of daycares and schools, the most vulnerable population to lead issues is that younger, 5 and younger, with the development, or where there might be a lot of, if there's going to be a large pregnant area, something like that. So we're trying to factor that in. Also looking at all the different socioeconomic conditions in areas to make sure that we're balancing out. Translation's a big thing. We ran a lot of studies and worked with a lot of partners. We found out that 95.5% of the Denver area is either English or Spanish. So everything we're developing is in both English and Spanish, but there's still additional languages. So, we're pulling in other community partners and cultural groups to help us get the word out in ways that are going to resonate with those different languages and different cultures, meeting them where they are, finding those trusted sources in those communities because the most important thing for us until we can get to these homes is that people are using these pitchers and filters, and that they truly understand where they might be at risk and what they can do to protect themselves. So, we're full steam ahead. We're throwing everything at it. But one of the major components is also this learning by doing, and knowing that we don't have all the answers, and we're just going to get better at this as we move forward. We find a new partner that says, hey, have you checked out with this source? Because they know about, this other group over here that might be of interest to you. And pick up the phone, call them, start working with them. And, as time goes on, we're just going to get better and better and make sure that everybody has the message, everybody understands what's going on and how they can protect themselves and their families.
Yeah. And what's the response from your customers and ratepayers to this major plan, this big investment?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that because we're doing these virtual meetings right now, and it's fascinating because, of course, we had all of these community meetings planned where we were going to go into these areas, and COVID hit. We've got the social distancing, and it's actually been a good thing for the program because the virtual meetings, more people are in attendance than I think we would be seeing otherwise. So every Tuesday and Thursday for the past couple of weeks and through the rest of July, we've been doing these virtual community meetings. We're really aggressive in our approach to making sure that those who we've hit first, as far as giving them their water filters and pitchers, we're actually then calling them and inviting them to this meeting, and even calling them again as the meeting starts and saying, just a reminder, meeting just started. So because of that, we're getting 500, 600, one phone call even had over 1,000 people on it. And in it, we're actually doing some polling just to hear, are you guys, how aware are you of the program? Are you using your filter? And so far, the response has been phenomenal from our community. Overwhelmingly, people are getting the information, they're understanding. The number one question, though, is, when are you going to get to my house? And so that's our biggest challenge right now. And we're only able, especially in this infancy of this program, that we're literally just rolling out. I mean, we've got this year selected, and we use the best information we could, and we're spreading it out because, it's construction work. It's invasive, it's disruptive. So you can't, just go find a 2 square mile radius and just knock them all out real quick. It takes, you got to get homeowner consent, and it's got to be a time when they're home, and you got to get other projects going on in the city coordinated with that, and all these different factors. So, unfortunately, that's not a question we can necessarily provide I think we provide a decent answer, but I understand if I was on the other end of it, I'm like, no, I want to know when my house is going to be replaced. So, but besides that, people seem to get it. We're hearing that people are using their filters and their pitchers. It's not ideal by any means, but more times than not, people are very appreciative, I think, just of the approach once they fully understand the background and that this is being done to ultimately help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Phenomenal. Well, I will call you back in about 15 years, and you'll tell me that it's all done and everything went well. But
sounds awesome.
Right. Look forward to that moment. Travis, thank you so much for the time and for sharing what you guys are doing there at Denver Water to tackle lead. And I definitely look forward to sharing this story with others. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity. We enjoy your work, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks a lot.
Waterloop, Waterloop, Waterloop.
The Waterloop podcast is sponsored by High Sierra Showerheads, the smart, stylish choice for conserving water, energy, and money while enjoying an invigorating shower. Use promo code WATERLOOP for 20% off at highsierrashowerheads.com.
You're in the Waterloop.